Hi, so here is my digital archive, my multimodal work in progress. I decided to do a video because I had a very interesting experience related to my primary source recently where I started crying actually when I was rewatching it for a deeper formal analysis, and I thought a video essay would be a good way to convey those emotions, kind of. So my tentative title of my research paper is The Healing of History, Miss Marvel and the Power of the Third Generation Partition Survivor Experience. My topic is the 1947 partition of India and Pakistan, where the British came or left India and gained its independence, and in the process they split India into what was supposed to be Muslim majority Islamic nation of Pakistan and secular Hindu majority nation of India. We can debate whether or not those were actually achieved in another time, but I chose this topic because I've been recently very enamored by this event that I am finding more and more ways that it has shaped me. And I chose the primary source of Miss Marvel episode 5. Miss Marvel is a Disney Plus Marvel superhero miniseries that aired last year. And the 5th episode specifically features an extended flashback to the 1947 partition. The series follows Kamala Khan, who is a Pakistani American Muslim woman who is 16 years old and lives in New Jersey. And she's a big Avengers fan, big superhero fan, but she finds out she actually has superpowers too. And she is exploring her identity and exploring where she belongs. She kind of feels out of place in school, in her community, in her family, kind of everywhere. And the 5th episode is actually the episode that features her the least. She's still very important in the episode, but it doesn't feature as much screen time of her because we are following her great-grandparents, Aisha and Hassan. So the flashback starts the episode in 1942, where Aisha, Miss Marvel, Kamala's great-grandmother on her mother's side, meets Hassan, her great-grandfather, because Aisha is running from the British and she takes refuge in Hassan's village in India. And Hassan basically takes her in, feeds her, and they fall in love. There is this line that Hassan kind of says. It's a line from Rumi's poetry. It reads, "What you seek is seeking you." Rumi's poetry has kind of disputed translations, but that is the translation the episode provides, and it's a very core part of this episode and my analysis of it. And so Aisha and Hassan, they have a child together who is Sana, Kamala's Nani, her grandmother. And they're living this very idyllic life in their small village that has a rose garden. They're raising their daughter, but the context of partition creeps up on them and they start to experience some of those prejudices that come with that. We have a Hindu who comes to their house and he's kind of friendly to them, but Hassan immediately lashes out and is like, people won't sell milk to my daughter because to my wife because she's Muslim. People won't buy my roses. And then also Najma, Aisha's friend comes, and she's like, finally, I've been looking for you everywhere. So this is really complicated. I'm gonna try to talk about it in as simple as possible. Basically, Aisha's from another dimension and Najma is from that same dimension, and Najma wants to go home to that dimension. Aisha has a family here, she doesn't actually want to go. So Najma's like, we're gonna go home soon. And Aisha's like, oh, this is bad, because she knows Najma's kind of crazy. So basically Aisha's like, we gotta go. We're not safe here as Muslims. So their family's being kind of forced both by Najma's arrival and partition creeping up on them. So Hassan is like, what? No way. Well, he doesn't say no way, but he's like, my father built this house. What am I gonna leave for my daughter? But Aisha really powerfully says that we can take our memories with us. As long as we're together, we can build a home anywhere. And so they get up and they leave for the last train to Pakistan, and they arrive at this very visceral train station scene where everyone is trying to get on the last train, knowing terrible things could happen to them if they don't. And Aisha realizes that Najma is there, and she realizes her daughter's not safe. So she sends Hassan and Sana away, and she's like, go, you're not safe. And basically they get separated in the crowd. Najma sees Aisha, stabs her when she realizes she doesn't have any intention of going home. And Aisha is like dying. There's this big boiling point moment where Hassan is calling out for Sana because Sana got lost. Sana is yelling out for Ummi, her mom, and Aisha is lying down dying, and she's calling out for Kamala. She says, what you seek is seeking you, and Kamala gets transported to the past. Which is very powerful in its message. Like, what does that mean when something so dire and horrible is happening and an ancestor calls out to their descendant, and the descendant gets pulled to the past? And basically Kamala sees her great grandmother dying and is like, what, you're supposed to save Nani? But then Aisha is like, what you seek is seeking you. You have everything you need, and everything is gonna be okay because you're here. And that everything you have, everything you need, is another sort of like thesis of this episode and of the series, because like I said, Kamala throughout the series is constantly feeling like othered and searching for where she belongs. And here her ancestor is telling her, no, you don't need to look for belonging anywhere except in yourself and in those that love you and value you. And then Kamala goes and saves her Nani, who's like 5 years old. She hugs her. It's another very symbolic moment. And then she gets transported back to the present after reuniting her grandfather, her great-grandfather, and her Nani. And in the present, there's this huge scene happening of this veil to another dimension opening, and people are gonna die. So Kamala, basically really confident now in her powers, saves these people and uses her powers to protect others. And I think that's very important that it's placed right after this flashback, because the series is making a huge claim here that Kamala's origin story is complete by her understanding of her family's partition story, and she would not be able to understand herself and who she is and who she's going to be without understanding who her family was and what her family experienced. And that is a big claim for people like me who grew up here, who are in Kamala's 3rd generation survivor partition position. And then there are 2 big moments that happen after that, where Kamala's mom and her Nani find out she is a superhero. And then Kamala hands her Nani a photo of her and her parents that her Nani is like really struck by, because she doesn't have a picture of her mother, who she was separated from. She was 5. And Kamala's mom's like, how did you get this? But Kamala's Nani is like, I'd like to believe that 2 people fell in love and created something bigger than either of them could have created alone. Like, oh my god, I'm gonna cry. Then when they're back at home, there's this big healing moment where everyone, Kamala, her mom, her Nani, they all acknowledge their faults and how they have been distant from each other, and how they want to bridge those gaps. And it is ultimately Kamala who ended up bridging all these gaps between Kamala and her mom and her Nani, Kamala and her Nani, by experiencing the past and appreciating her history and her family's suffering, and recognizing that they are the most important people to each other. They have what they need. And so there's this moment where they're all hugging, and 3 generations basically heal. And so that's my formal analysis. And now methods of analysis, I am doing visual analysis of trains, riots, Kamala's like powers, the 3 generations hugging, that symbolic moment, Kamala crying in the past as a third generation survivor of partition, and that carrying over to the present. Kamala hugging her Nani, who's a child. There's this significant moment, an audio moment that I'm going to analyze, of Aisha saying "I love you" when there's this British broadcast in the background that's talking about the horrible things going on, all the riots and everything, and Aisha's just rocking her baby and saying "I love you." That you could feel it in the episode, that it cuts through that British broadcast, and it's this really human intervention. And then some textual analysis. What you seek is seeking you. That line of poetry is key, and obviously I'm going to try to connect it to some other sources I have. Then we have the scholarly conversation. We have these scholars that are asking whether partition impacts third generation survivors or not. And we have Ahmed Muhammad Arif on one side, who's saying no, the memory is not carried over to third generation. The second generation is affected, and then it skips the third generation. And then Ansha Malhotra is saying no way, we're all totally shaped by this cataclysmic South Asian event. She makes it cataclysmic in her accounts. And then we have the superhero conversation, where Shilpa Dave is saying Kamala is a beacon of positive South Asian, Muslim, and Asian American representation. The superhero genre and Marvel really expands the target audience, where it's not just purely the Pakistani American Muslim experience anymore, it's all of these experiences. And what does that mean for the interpretation of this source and the impact of this partition story? And then we have Muhammad Arif, who also is talking about high achieving South Asians and this need to go higher when you're in a foreign country. And how does that relate to the superhero position? Then we have the diaspora experience. There's a lot on this. A lot of my sources overlap with this topic. We have Prabjot Parmar's work on Canadian diaspora. Why would South Asian diaspora care about the experience? Well, they have specific experiences as diaspora that actually lend to the partition experience in ways that the native South Asian experience don't. Then we have Daniela Vitolo, her literary analysis of Bapsi Sidwa's Defend Yourself Against Me, which is a short story that follows this South Asian community in America that's all different ethnicities, and they're having a dinner together. And it portrays the real ways that those who are not even alive in partition can inherit the burdens of their ancestors, as well as how America can be a liminal space for South Asians to reconcile their partition stories with each other. We have Pablo Bose's Dilemmas of Diaspora, really amazing article that basically complicates the definition of diaspora and claims that there's no single diaspora experience, and uses the Bengali Canadian diaspora as an example, where they have different relationships to partition based on how they became diaspora, where the Bengali Canadian diaspora was mostly upper class people that actually immigrated during partition, whereas other diasporas might have immigrated when Bangladesh was created in 1971. Then we have cinematic representations of partition. We have Dr. Manoj Sharma, who talks about how partition storytelling is scarce, but proves the relevance of the event, and how partition storytelling can be both accurate and poignant. So that is just like an overview of the scholarly conversations. Overall, there's not a lot on my specific topic of the third generation survivor partition South Asian American experience, but there is a lot on partition, and there is a decent amount on Ms. Marvel comics, not on the series, and there is a lot that I can do with those existing scholarly conversations to create my own. So yeah, that is a overview of my research project. I hope you understand my primary source a lot better, and I hope you understand what I'm trying to do, which is really asking and answering the question, what is the significance of history? Why do we need to learn history? We all learn history in school, but we never really are given action items. What do we do with this history? Does it actually repeat itself? How can we stop that from happening? How does history shape our identity? And why should we be aware of that? And Ms. Marvel is what I'm using to answer that. So yeah, the healing of history, Ms. Marvel, and the power of the third generation partitioning survivor experience. I can't wait to actually finish this paper and share my findings. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.